Tell me if you can relate. On one hand, we see children as unique beings with their own individual talents and strengths. And on the other hand, we set up 12 years of measuring them against each other using the dreaded bell curve for their age group, as if the goal is to turn them into something like everyone else, to actually standardize the children themselves. And if you're still in the deschooling phase, it's important to notice that the measuring of the children has nothing to do with their learning. Sometimes it's a tool that we use to see how the system is doing, how well we're doing. The kids are used as feedback because it's quantifiable, but the end result is all about comparison. So we've all read enough parenting books to know that comparing children is not a good thing. Maybe we've even been a victim of this kind of parenting ourselves. So when it comes to unschooling our kids, why do we continue to make comparisons between our children and other people's children? Like, my son isn't reading at the same level as the other kids his age, or her daughter is so into journaling and mine won't pick up a pencil, or their family is out exploring in the community themselves while mine resist anything that involves leaving the house. Sound familiar? Actually, that list could go on and on. Lots of mainstream parenting advice lists the drawbacks for these kinds of comparisons, like comparisons damage their self-esteem, or comparisons damage that parent-child relationship. Comparisons make your child resentful of your criticisms. They make them resentful of the person you're comparing them to. Comparisons tell them that you think they're not good enough as is. Comparisons tell them you wish they were different. And then your child starts to believe that they really aren't good enough, or they start to carry those feelings with them as they grow up. So nothing good comes from that list, right? And yet, in spite of knowing that comparisons are not a good thing, we just can't stop ourselves. Why is that? And that's what I want to talk with you about today. I want to talk about 4 reasons we struggle with comparisons and competition. You know, it's not surprising that we make comparisons. Often our own worth is determined by how we measure up against somebody else. No wonder this is so hard for us as parents opting for this very unfamiliar form of education and parenting. So I've thought of these 4 reasons for you to consider. They might help you make some shifts with your own kids. Number 1, you're doing something very different from the norm. I know, not a big news flash. But it's one thing if you're duplicating school at home. Then you have benchmarks that you're aiming toward. But when you unschool, you've ditched the benchmarks. When you allow a child to explore their interests and follow their curiosities, you have no idea where that's going to lead. Setting up standards and yardsticks would be a waste of time. Time that you could be in there connecting and fueling their interests. So you're stepping off the path. And frankly, if you've spent any time in school at all, you've been conditioned to believe that that can only lead to disaster. No wonder it takes deliberate effort to stop comparing them to those familiar standards. The second thing is you don't do well with judgment. Maybe you have people talking to you about how your kid is behind. Oh, those helpful critics. Or maybe it's just voices in your head from years of micro criticisms, and maybe not even that micro. In either case, you're not feeling that confident. And those voices are like sharks smelling blood. They're moving in on you. Even as one of the most well-intentioned parents, you can sometimes fall into the idea that your kids are a reflection of yourself and your parenting choices. It's a big responsibility to do something that very few, at least that you can see in your local community, very few seem to be doing. And the internet is full of parents who show us how they see their kids as extensions of themselves. And not just the internet, though that makes our circle ever widening, but articles in the media, conversations in the neighborhood, and of course, you know, those bumper stickers with their bragging rights. You know, it's so much ego. And so many moms and dads living vicariously through their children, encouraging them to do the things that they never did themselves. It's a mess. You have the opportunity to clean off that lens and see your own motivations more clearly. What's that Oprah quote? When we know better, we do better. So if you find yourself worried about what others might think, find someone you trust to talk with about it. Uncover what's really bothering you or how the criticism may not even be valid. We talk about some of these things in my private membership group for anybody that's interested. Okay, third thing, you may need some foundation work. Have you thought about why you're choosing this educational option? Why you're choosing to home educate at all? You had good reasons to start, probably. Maybe it's time you pulled them out and dust them off. Remind yourself of why this is such a great opportunity for your child and for your family. When we first started out, a friend told me, create your own personal philosophy about education and children and parenting. What do you believe? At first, that sounded kind of lofty, but I have a podcast and I have a blog post that can help you walk through that if you want. One is called Creating Your Own Philosophy, and the other is an Unschoolers Manifesto. So if you'd like to dive a little into, okay, I can DIY this, let me look at these different resources and see what I can figure out. Because when you've taken the time to do that, you'll find that your foundation is stronger. You won't be unschooling because somebody else's kid turned out great. You'll be doing it because you know it's right for you and your kids. Put the links to dive a little deeper on that. The fourth thing to consider is that society is preoccupied with competition, and our own self-worth is often directly tied to how we compare with others. Sometimes parents will say that the competition is inspiring to their child, or it helps them work harder, or even keeps them from getting cocky. And they believe that there's such a thing as healthy competition and that it will build character and produce excellence. But that's not what's actually happening. Competition often undermines cooperation, as kids are conditioned to believe that triumphing over somebody else is what matters the most. Alfie Kohn writes that competition is inherently destructive and explains more in his article about the case against competition. I'll put a link to that too. His first book, called No Contest, explores research on the negative effects that arise in a really competitive environment. Our goal, at least my goal as an unschooling parent, was to help my child feel good in their own skin. I wanted them to know that they have gifts and strengths to offer the world that are completely separate and unrelated to what other people's gifts and strengths are. So, what are the takeaways here? Every child is different and develops at a different pace. Different does not equal wrong. No competition exists. There's no race to the top, no finish line. Don't let your ego interfere in your relationship or your expectations of your children. Do whatever personal work you need to do to be the parent you want to be, the parent your child deserves. Focus on who your child actually is, not who you wish they were. That ripple effect will be amazing. So I have resources to help you with all of this. A membership group, a website full of resources, courses, blog posts, podcast, all kinds of things to help you step away from the status quo, to help you build your confidence so that you can connect with your child in a way that really works for your family. So if you're new to the YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe, like it, or comment, hit the little bell, and you'll be notified whenever I publish something new. I'll put some more videos up that you can go next to so that you can keep working on it, because really that's what this is all about. Personally figuring out, what do I need to do? How much do I need to learn to get more comfortable with all of this? Reach out if you need anything.